Last year, we discussed Ashley's manipulative tendencies and its utilization within the narrative. It's her most prevalent trait, one that is quite apparent in almost every scene she's in. She's always doing whatever she can to ensure two very important things. Andrew must stay as Andy in order to mold him into whatever she pleases, and convince him that everything is his fault. She is depicted as demonic and abhorrent, given the frivolous nature she harbors when it comes to committing these atrocities. She's had no qualms in cannibalizing the cultist, and she felt nothing when killing Nina. The only thing on her mind was to blackmail Andrew into staying with her. It was only Andrew who had the natural reaction of panicking upon seeing Nina's corpse. Ashley's the one behind everything. It isn't his fault that things had come this way, right? After all, she's the one who makes him do all the dirty work for her. This is not the case at all. And I made that erroneous conclusion that this scene established that these two siblings have always been this way when it came to their morality. If Ashley's prominent trait is manipulation, then I would label Andrew's trait to be deception. The brilliance of his characterization is how it is able to subtly trick the audience into believing that he is an innocent victim free of guilt, and it worked phenomenally. There's a large majority of the fanbase that fell for his lies, fully convinced that Andrew is only a victim of circumstance and deserves to be with Julia as she is his one-way ticket to normalcy. However, Andrew just isn't deceiving the player, but he's also deceiving himself. He isn't just acting as a victim of abuse, he's fully deluded himself into the role when in actuality, he is arguably much worse than Ashley, and this chapter explores this in its entirety. There is so much to discuss with the two siblings thanks to the gigantic amount of characterization given to both Andrew and Ashley in this chapter, as there are so many additions that completely change the perspective about certain aspects of them. It is a continuation of Decay's overarching theme of betrayal and aggression, a harsh reminder that if they insist on staying this way, as seen in how entering this route is either by Ashley distrusting Andrew or Andrew distrusting Ashley, then nothing will ever change and they are in for a road of misery and toxicity. It is quite obvious given the new main menu screen, as it now shifts to a detached and frustrated Andrew, holding the very same cleaver that Ashley had in the original, as well as an anxious and uncomfortable Ashley terrified of what Andrew has become. However, it isn't like this is anything new. This has always been the two of them. It's just that the layers have been fully peeled off. Take away Ashley's power and control over situations with Andrew, and you're left with nothing but an anxious girl who's desperately clinging on to the delusion of the past. Force Andrew to take control, and you're finally able to see him for who he truly is. An apathetic, cruel, and slimy individual who's only concerned with ensuring he is devoid of consequences. Ashley may be content with doing business with demons, but she is unable to deceive them in ways Andrew is capable of. As seen in Lord Unknown's comments about him, the story makes it very clear that Decay is not the answer, as seen in how toxic the siblings' relationship gets throughout this route, especially the dead-end ones. This is not to imply that Andrew is the cause of everything, as Ashley is most definitely a factor to several things in the narrative, but I do think that this chapter paints a different picture on who Andrew truly is, as well as how Ashley has come to be who she currently is. For this video, we will be mainly discussing the Decay route while slightly alluding to the Burial one if need be. A video dedicated to Burial will likely be made whenever it gets its eventual third chapter in the future. Be advised for spoilers. The way Ashley controls Andrew is by utilizing Andy, an encapsulation of everything Andrew loathes about himself. She understands this perfectly, and it's how she causes many of the story's most important scenes. However, Andy is far from what Andrew thinks he is, as he is calculated, cold, and dejected. But let's actually examine who Andy really is and what it is that makes Andrew hate him so much. Andy is established as a spineless pushover who has zero agency for his life. He is constantly at Ashley and Renee's beck and call given their outrageous requests. And worst of all, it is never good enough, and it is always his fault. Leyley is having a fit? Well, Andrew can just handle it. Ashley's covered in mud? Well, why did Annie leave her alone? She is his responsibility. Leyley destroyed his books? Well, he should have just hid them away from her. Leyley destroyed the sprouts he planted? Zero repercussions for Leyley. Renee never blames her for anything, and this is due to the fact that she has described Ashley as a problem child, whereas she views Andrew as an easy one. She couldn't care less to deal with trouble and would much rather throw it onto somebody else. She is the cause of everything when it comes to the way the siblings have turned out to be. Her introduction in the newest chapter is presented via these puzzles, which gives us a glimpse at the dynamic in question. Here, Renee is monitoring Andy as she watches his every step, with a path of red flowers that if strayed away from, she will be furious and demand that he sticks to what she wants him to do. In addition, there is this room which is engulfed by a childishly evil Renee, next to a kid happily giving a thumbs up. With each step, Renee's scolding of Andy resurfaces. Memories that he's thrown away such a long time ago, which is likely why her eyes are covered in the flashback. It is never ending, and this is absolutely terrifying for a child to deal with. Children are naturally afraid of their parents, and their rage could easily come off as a level above everything they've ever seen. Although, one may argue that because it is the natural thing, Andy may be trying to replicate that behavior in order to come off as normal. Every second she is on screen, she is forceful and her word is absolute. Whatever she says goes. She is truly abhorrent in every sense of the word, especially in this scene in Chapter 2. She is aware of Andrew's tendency to avoid consequences as well as his passive nature as she's seen previously. It is exactly why she blames herself for everything rather than victimizing herself. She perfectly plays into Andrew's biggest fears and offers him the easy way out. Exactly what he's been seeking for so long. It's what Andy represents in this point of the story. He is what he resorts to when things are too rough. The story is constantly reminding Andrew that Andy is not the answer, and many of the dead ends in this chapter are a result of Andy, especially this one where Andrew is tagged with the option to either embrace or reject Andy. Andy's existence is a massive obstacle to the siblings' growth, as it not only causes Andrew to lose all agency and become nothing but Ashley's toy for his own convenience, but it also causes Ashley to latch onto the past as she's been seen desperately clinging onto the hopes of Andy resurfacing because she was much happier back then. Andrew must confront Andy, and until the day he does, things will always be this way and nothing will ever be resolved. It's what Burial was trying to convey, and Andrew who was finally able to move past Andy after Ashley finally decides to trust him for who he is. All the while, Andrew finally embraces his sociopathic tendencies and adores Ashley unconditionally. It isn't his fault things had turned out this way, that his dynamic with Ashley ended up being such an entangled mess of a relationship, one where he both loves but hates Ashley and cannot let go of her. She is the reason for all his troubles, but she is also the only person to ever understand him wholeheartedly and see through his lies. She is the only character that manages to bring out Andrew's true nature. He cannot be superficial with her because he feels a connection towards her. It's no wonder they're so toxically dependent on one another. He had to be everything all at once to her. Her parent, her brother, her friend, and her caretaker at such a young age. Perhaps it was much easier to let Ashley do whatever she wanted because it would make her happy. But maybe being Andy was much easier. And just to ensure that Andrew wouldn't feel a speck of consequence, she tells him that this is not a justification, rather an explanation. What more could he ask for? He isn't at fault for anything, and he was morally correct all along about everything. He can play the normal act in this fashion, and it almost works. In one route, he betrays Ashley's trust and falls into despair thanks to his mother's words, because there is an easy way out for him to play normal, but he just can't. One of the most important factors for a manipulator is to be capable of understanding just what it is the person in front of you desires, and Renee knows everything given her history with him. She knows he wants to play normal, she knows that he is spineless and wants to avoid responsibility, and she knows that he wants a way out. However, with Ashley, she is her usual self because she knows that there is no sweet-talking Ashley into anything. While Andrew loves playing facades and attempts to manipulate others as seen in Julia, Ashley presents herself wholeheartedly to everyone. She is quite open to whom she dislikes, as seen in the harassment she threw at Julia for dating Andrew. However, Ashley's weakness is succumbing to a higher power. This can be shown in Decay's second chapter as Andrew becomes more and more uncontrollable, causing Ashley to become helpless due to her inability to gain total control of the situation. This is further supported by her reasoning of eating people, in which she considers to make her feel powerful. I think it's a way to establish that Ashley wants to feel in control by any means necessary given her actions towards Andrew throughout the narrative. It's why Renee tries coming off aggressively and pushing all the blame onto Ashley. Who is Ashley to not appreciate this saint of a mother who's done so much for them and loves them so much? But it doesn't work because the key difference between Andrew and Ashley is that Ashley only feels this way towards Andrew, nothing else affects her. This scene alone fully captures her manipulative tendencies in ways that Ashley could never dream of achieving. But what I find fascinating about Renee is that she cares for Douglas, their father, despite coming off as a truly vile individual. While it does seem like she's taking advantage of him and his income, she was against him working overtime due to his health. I feel as though if she truly had ulterior motives to marry him, she would have immediately pounced on the suggestion. Not to mention, her scene from the vision room does give us a glimpse of their lives beforehand. The fact that Renee married at such a young age does insinuate that she likely comes from an abusive household, or at least a neglectful one, as seen in how Renee's mother calls her simply to ask for a kidney transplant for her sister despite the fact that she has not spoken to her since Renee had left the house. It adds this level of irony because she repeats the exact cycle of abuse onto her children, as Renee's behavior towards her mother is akin to that of the way Ashley acts around Renee, especially with the way Renee constantly pesters Ashley to get a job, all the while joking about how if she were a good parent, she'd support her unconditionally, something that she had never received from her own family. Furthermore, Douglas likely dealt with physical abuse given what was revealed in the vision room, especially with the way his father acts. I think this flashback emphasizes one important thing. Andrew never changed. While he is shown to lack agency due to his mother and sister, he decides to fully embrace his role as Leyley's toy once he realizes that she is the first and last person to ever understand who he is fundamentally. He does not like anyone and never will. Let's take a look at his reaction to Nina's corpse. At a glance, it does look as though Andy is having a natural reaction upon witnessing a corpse. He is afraid, worried, and shocked. However, there isn't a speck of remorse from him. Not once does he ever utter anything regarding the murder itself, rather the fact that he could be thrown into prison. Even with his little to no agency, he would still be able to prevent this from happening, but he doesn't. He could have just lied to Leyley regarding Nina and said she was busy, but he didn't. Given his capabilities in taking control, he could have easily avoided the situation, but he doesn't. He claims that they don't want to lock Nina in the crate, yet he is the one who suggests using a stick to keep the lock on Nina. It's what the blood oath represents, that he is able to have agency and control others when need be. He is able to trick Ashley into a promise that doesn't give her as many benefits as she had expected. She is merely a priority rather than a necessity. It is just much easier to be manipulated by Ashley and blame her for everything. After all, it was her fault Nina died because she coerced him into it. Killing the warden was her fault because she got herself in mortal danger. It is a never-ending cycle with the two of them as they are in a constant loop of pushing blame onto one another. Ashley is actively trying to ensure that she conveys the message that everything happening is his fault so that she could bring Andy into the forefront, while Andrew's constantly telling himself that everything he does is her fault because she is the one who is actively pushing him around to do ridiculous things. But how ridiculous were those demands in the first place? When dissecting the many events in the story, you'd realize that in a lot of them, Ashley never forces Andrew to do her bidding, which is her manipulation tactic. She is simply giving him the option to do these things, because it would support her argument that she's never forced him to do anything. It's how she gets on his nerves in room 302 as she emphasizes that he is the one who has decided to do everything here, and there is a level of truth to it. Ashley is a proponent to all of Andrew's actions, but Andrew still insists on going along with those plans despite his supposed reluctance. It's this scene that culminates everything regarding Andrew embracing his role as Leyley's toy. Upon realizing that she may be the only one in his life that can truly connect with him, perhaps it might just be the two of them, so where's the value in anything else? I think the most important detail from this segment is Andrew's view on Ashley and how he labels her to being always Leyley, implying that she has never changed. However, given the many revelations in this chapter, this is not the case and we will be discussing it later in this video. I mean, one of the major points of Ashley's character arc is getting accustomed to growth in the first place. It wasn't always Leyley, Ashley was there as well. Andrew is just superficial towards anybody that isn't Ashley. He may have friends unlike her, but none of them are genuine and he doesn't seem to even remember their names. I really love what Andy tells Leyley after being suspended. He suggests that she makes herself likable to draw people towards her, and I think that just encapsulates his character entirely as it perfectly describes his relationship to Julia. Despite what Andrew constantly reaffirms to himself, he is a vile and cunning manipulator, one who is capable of playing a facade in order to say the things people want to hear to get what he wants to see in his dynamic to Julia. It says a lot when a literal demonic entity calls him a deceptive and lying soul. His deception when it comes to this trait is how he actively makes himself be tricked by whoever is attempting to deceive him. As seen in how he calls Renee a failure for her inability to fool him despite him wanting to be fooled. Andrew's role as an unreliable narrator acts as a means to attempt deceiving both the player and himself, as well as highlighting Andrew's delusions and how he sees himself and the world around him. He is simply a product of circumstance and nothing more than a victim. He can't be in the wrong. He never is. It's what causes these misconceptions of Andrew's character, as though he were an innocent soul who is being abused by Ashley, when in reality he is just as bad, if not worse. I think this scene perfectly presents the roles Andrew and Ashley serve in their relationship. The story has always been showing the cracks in Ashley's dominant role, and so this scene is utilized to do exactly that. Up until this moment, Andrew has been nothing but an overly anxious doormat that Ashley can use for whatever she wants. The game's theme page literally describes him as one. This moment acts as a building block of Andrew's true personality characterized, because it is the first time in which Andrew is shown to be in the dominant seat. He flips between Andrew and Andy depending on the situation. He switches to Andrew when the scenario calls for action, and Andy resurfaces when it is time for him to take things easy, all the while pushing the blame onto Ashley. This scene perfectly depicts this. Andrew's aggressive tone is shown as he is adamant in letting Ashley know that she cannot contact other people anymore, and threatens her to comply. It leaves Ashley puzzled, breaking her bubbly persona and switching to a more hostile attempt to put Andrew down. She must be in the dominant position, as shown in her asking him who he thinks he's talking to. If she isn't, then she switches to Leyley, a bratty entitled sister who takes her brother for granted to do anything for her. And it works, because Andrew knows that it is much easier to be Andy for Ashley, and it is why he immediately becomes passive, all the while she switches back to Ashley, treating him as though she were talking to a child. Despite his distaste of Andy, he will utilize them to his benefit if it means walking away from accountability, as he never calls Ashley out for using the name in this scene, despite various other instances of him lashing out for the very same reason. Throughout the story, Andrew has always been lying to the player. For example, he is strongly against killing the campers and warns Ashley not to do anything, yet he is the one who kills the child the moment he realizes that it might bite them in the long run. Nothing is too far when it comes to Andrew, even if it means killing a kid. I think it really supports the idea that Andrew is the sociopathic and detached one of the two, and has always been this way. He is cold and calculating, and has zero boundaries when it comes to saving his skin. While Ashley's POV crosses out faces and names of characters such as Nina, Andrew's doesn't, but not because he is close to anybody in particular. In fact, I think it is because of his deceptive nature, where the story has his perspective show his supposed friends in school, but have them be all unnamed because they don't matter in the slightest to him. The narrative has always been solely building up Andrew's true nature. It is just that Andrew is excellent at hiding it. He is just like his mother, one who wants to do anything he can to avoid inconveniences. Nevertheless, I do want to emphasize on one point. It isn't as though Andy is a facade Andrew plays whenever he wants to run away from trouble. It is a general part of who he is. You can't separate Andrew and Andy from one another. It is one of the main themes of the story in the first place. Entanglement. The inseparable nature of Andrew and Ashley, the intertwining nature of both burial and decay and how both roots build off one another. And you absolutely cannot talk about decay without accounting for the existence of burial. One may describe them as multiple personalities within Andrew. It contrasts Ashley's manipulative nature stemming from her emotional outbursts. Many of her actions are derived from this, as in the case of her killing Nina because she was in love with Andrew, killing Andrew in her vision to attempt showing that she does not need him despite regretting it eventually, and the entirety of the shots and such and splattery. The story has always shown Andrew's deception in their relationship indirectly. For instance, when Ashley snarkily asks what's stopping Andrew from meeting any woman, he replies with nothing but a death stare, which causes Ashley to almost immediately attempt to break that ominous aura to return to the status quo. Scenes like these showcase how fragile Ashley's tactics are, and how emotional she really is. She cannot handle not being in power, and will throw a fit depending on the severity of the situation, which is further supported by the scene discussed earlier regarding her feeling powerful when eating people. Furthermore, both of them are calculated individuals. It isn't exclusive to only one of them. In Ashley's case, this is shown in how she is insistent on calling him Andy to ensure dominance and control, because that is when she feels at ease and is able to play her bubbly personality. It is ironic because Ashley feels at ease when she is in control, yet Andrew feels at ease when he is being controlled. She must ensure that Andy returns because that is how she can feel validated. After all, she views herself as completely worthless without Andrew, and it shows throughout her actions in decay, which we'll get into in the next segment. Her only means of expressing affection is by pushing blame onto him. It's why she claims it was his fault for her incident regarding lighting fireworks indoors, since he should have stopped her. She was just a child who didn't know any better. This is where we establish one of Ashley's main characteristics that define her: emotionally driven actions. She does not usually think logically and recklessly, jumps into things as seen in their interaction with the hitman. She carelessly runs off into the bushes just so Andrew would be the one to dirty his hands. But she doesn't account for the fact that all would have been for nothing had the hitman simply started with looking through the bushes she was hiding in. I think inspecting Andrew's relationship to Julia says a lot about Andrew as a character. At a glance, the relationship looks great. She's an awesome person, arguably one of the only genuinely good people in the story, and is an affectionate, sweet, great girl that wants the best for the relationship. And Andrew responds in good faith too, right? Their interactions are wholesome with how he flirts with her. He does everything she wants him to do and so much more. Hell, she was even willing to open up to Andrew regarding the most traumatic event in her life, losing someone she considered to be a sister. It's no wonder why so many fans consider this to be a great relationship. Except, it is all superficial. Those conversations are nothing but a fallacy that Andrew has orchestrated for Julia, but not out of any love for her. The story uses this trait of Andrew to further deceive both himself and the audience, as he is also likely so up his own delusions that he genuinely believes he is free of guilt. It is quite apparent in the phone call he has with Julia back in chapter 1, as he says he doesn't think there is anything he should be held accountable for. While he does actively claim that he has tried to genuinely fall in love with her, and has stated various times that he misses her, his actions do not coincide with these thoughts. That desire is nothing more than a means of masking his feelings for Ashley because he is clearly afraid of the repercussions others would give him for what he feels for her, and Julia is a means to be the replacement. This can be seen in the shallow compliments he throws at Julia, in which one may argue that these are things he wants to say to Ashley badly, such as "nothing will frustrate me like you do," or request to tie her hair up in the same hairstyle that Ashley wears. His phrasing in his monologues is suspicious in how he says, and I quote, "Let me fall in love with her, she's perfect for it." it, but not me. Andrew couldn't care less about Julia herself and is merely interested in the idea of chasing normalcy via Julia. Just a quick reminder to let you all know that if you're enjoying the content, to be sure to like and subscribe for more as we're trying to hit 1,000 subs. Memberships are finally available now that we are partnered with YouTube, so be sure to join if you're interested and support the content. A special thanks to my current members, Rizechi and Quad_O. Back to the video. She was the door to his desired life, the one in which he is able to act as a functioning member of society with a socially acceptable partner. But her desires are meaningless, as he is constantly brushing off whenever she requests making their relationship official. He's always equipped with excuses and is always thinking about Ashley when he's with Julia. Not to mention, he doesn't seem to be happy with Julia, with many of these CGs showcasing this. Are you really going to tell me that you'd believe his claim that he tried falling for her when he's literally viewed her as nothing but a mundane individual whose best asset was decent sex? He keeps telling himself that he truly did try to love Julia, yet he casually throws her letter away as if she was a meaningless part of his life. He claims that the fact that he feels nothing for Julia bothers him, but I think it merely stems from losing his one-way ticket to acting normal. She can no longer be his gateway to normalcy, and I just cannot view it as anything but that. If he truly cared for her, then why did he never attempt to confront Ashley's harassment towards Julia? The only instance of Andrew being angry over Ashley's harassment is simply the fact that she drove Julia away from him, but not out of any form of affection. Harassment was never the issue itself, and this vision supports this. In fact, he actually is frustrated that Julie keeps bringing it up to him because he is aware of the culprit, yet he is reluctant to admit the truth. He does nothing but gaslight her into overlooking it and plays pretend just to continue dating her. She'll be okay. She won't be hurt. But it doesn't matter, and it never has. She is only somebody for Andrew to manipulate whichever way he desires, akin to Ashley's perspective on Andy. This moment perfectly outlines his lack of empathy for Julia's worries regarding their relationship. With each passing second, Andrew gradually becomes more aggressive the more she nudges on the possibility that the culprit behind the harassment is Ashley. And he snaps, showing his true self to Julia for the first time ever. And the moment he realizes that he's broken the facade he's shown to her, he immediately switches back to the perfect boyfriend, all the while attempting to manipulate her into thinking that she is at fault and he is the victim. I think it adds this parallel to Renee, as the two of them are adept in taking advantage of others' weaknesses in ways that are most effective, as explained with Renee in the previous segments. However, there is one key difference. Andrew never paints himself as the one responsible. Despite both characters doing everything in their power to avoid responsibility, Renee is willing to paint herself as the villain in order to get what she wants, and she does exactly that when giving Andrew the option to accept or decline the job offer. Throughout this series, there has almost never been an instance in which Andrew outright admits that he is at fault for something, except one: physically abusing Ashley in shots and such. I think the quote, "I'll apologize in a bit, I'm sure, but I don't think I'll mean it," says a lot about his dynamic with Ashley, as the only time he's ever attempted to take accountability for his actions is when Ashley is genuinely hurt or in pain. Despite how it may seem, he does genuinely want to do everything in his power to keep her safe and protect her. Andrew's willingness to be held liable for this beatdown is huge, and simply saying it shows Andrew's love for Ashley would be an understatement. He is adept at making others feel guilty for his own behavior, as he is perfectly able to lead Julie into believing that she is the villain in this scenario. She shouldn't have brought this up in the first place, and so she must apologize. He wants to reap the benefits of being with her to call himself normal, all the while walking over her with zero interest in her well-being. What a horridly deceitful individual. And to make matters worse, there are two scenes that really define just how low Andrew thinks of Julia. The first being once he is freed from the chains in the apartment at the hands of Julia. Here, he tries to worm his way back into her life, all for the sake of escaping Ashley in this route. Hell, you are even tasked with attempting to sweet-talk her way to convince Julia to get her to free him in the first place. It was never about her. However, this interaction gives us a glimpse at a certain part of Andrew that hasn't been shown before: his confusion over his manipulation failing. I think this is due to the fact that being at fault does not register within Andrew, and so he must be in the right and just cannot comprehend why his tactics aren't working. It makes zero sense. He is always right, so why is she not complying, and what did he exactly do to cause her to avoid him? On top of that, I believe this scene demonstrates another aspect of Andrew that has been prevalent throughout the series: his inability to see other people as equal, and this is vividly clear in his relationship to Julia. He was never treating her as an equal and simply just buttered her up with words, doing whatever she pleases just so she would be happy. He never cared about what she actually was passionate about, nor did he be there for her in the hardest of times. Even though he was with her when visiting Nina's grave, the only thing in his mind was the murder that he and Ashley had committed and ensuring that Julia must not find out. The inner monologue in this conversation shows the dedication to utilize every weakness she has to take advantage of her and acquire the freedom that he yearns for. even going as far as being prepared to have a family with her just for this end. I think Andrew might be incapable of understanding human connection and is simply doing what he assumes is ideal when dating Julia, but it just doesn't work because it is nothing but superficial. Relationships must be on equal terms on both ends. Anything else and it simply turns into anything but a relationship, and instead is a master-servant dynamic, as Julia puts it. There is just something so strikingly fascinating about the way Julia's letter describes Andrew. It culminates Julia's growth to finally put her foot down and mouth off all her frustrations towards Andrew given her extremely passive and pushover personality that she was characterized as up until this point. Those feelings were never love, they were fear, and I just think something about that is poetic. Andrew is simply a monster in the guise of normalcy, and that mask managed to fool Julia into believing she was in love with him. From the moment she had met him, he had already planned on what to do with her. His presence throughout the narrative has always gradually come off as aggressive and controlling whenever he wants to be, and this has always been brought out in his scenes with Julia, but sugarcoated beneath a layer of affection unless aggravated to the limit. It's ironic. Julia might as well represent everything he loathes about Andy. Spineless, pushover, and a lack of agency. It all blows up in his face when Julia is finally able to gain that agency for herself and cut ties with him completely. While Andrew is a remorseless manipulator, I think I would label Ashley as a desperate one. Her manipulation is founded on her anxiety on losing the affection from the only person that matters in her life. It has always been the driving force of her character. Her inability to express herself unless it is via manipulation or malice. Unconditional love does not register within Ashley, and this is what Burial has partly explored with its current content. While Decay focused plenty on Andrew's character and his psyche, it is quite probable that Burial will explore Ashley in her journey to accepting Andrew's unconditional love in that route and in turn growing to love herself. But that discussion is for another video. Her fragility and her manipulation begins to be more frequent the further the story progresses until it all converges in this moment where Ashley assumes she has acquired everything by having Andrew right where she has him, with the CGs heavily focusing on Ashley's confidence, until everything backfires. As I explained in my Ashley video, Decay has always been the route in which Ashley finally gets what she wanted for so long, until everything crumbles. It's the storytelling of these two siblings that the way they are is distorted, and they must change, or else they are in for a path of misery as seen in the story's various dead endings in this route. Ashley cannot keep this farce up for so long, and their slow decay of their dynamic is a product of this very behavior that the two of them exhibit. Her goal has always been to resurface Andy, as he was the one she assumed would make her return to the good old days that she so cherished. But all she gets in return is a dejected and unresponsive Andrew who slashes through all her banter, going all the way back to Andrew's dominance and their dynamic when things don't go Ashley's way. Final scene of the second chapter of Decay emphasizes on this fact, with Ashley's crying upon likely realizing that it may be too late to bring back what they once had. But it does beg the question, is Andrew truly worse than Ashley? Both of these siblings are beyond salvation and are despicable individuals. It is quite obvious with Ashley's open and direct characterization. But not many are aware of how truly scummy Andrew can be due to his more subtle and indirect development, leaving many to misunderstand his character. His delusions in thinking that he has any hope of being normal or connecting with anyone that isn't Ashley is exactly what makes him such a cunning and unreliable narrator in the story. He deceives the audience as well as himself, all the while saying one thing and doing the complete opposite. As explained earlier in the video, Coffin's foremost theme is the inseparable nature of Andrew and Ashley. They are destined to be glued to one another until the end of time, whether it be life or death. It's why Burial and Decay exist, to explore both sides to the intertwining nature of the siblings. Decay explores the toxic nature of their dynamic through its many dead endings that are a product of their several mistakes over the course of the narrative. These two cannot envision a world without the other as shown in these endings. The atmosphere is toxic, disturbing, and poisonous to both the player and the siblings. No matter how many times they fight, they will always be stuck with one another. They're always trying to ensure that the other is shaped in a certain way. In Andrew's case, he wants her to be insecure and fragile to feel better about himself. He's done this in chapter 1 where he suggests that the guards may not find her pretty enough to leer at in comparison to the lady from room 302 when in reality, they were doing exactly that. But Andrew wouldn't admit it because she is his and his alone. He says it right here. He's actively trying to conceal his feelings, but he's so obsessed with Ashley much more than she ever is with him. This is evident in many of the CGs, and it is quite apparent that in almost all of them, he is touching Ashley in some way, shape, or form. The moment he is separated from her, he instantly misses her as seen when he goes investigating the cultists at the start of chapter 2. This chapter is essentially a shift in perspective from both characters' first impressions. As I discussed in my Kakegurui video from last year, regarding the story's ability to completely switch your perspective on Yumeko and Kirari, Coffin is no exception. From the very beginning of the story, Ashley has always been established as a character devoid of any remorse or connections to anybody. This can be seen in how she views Nina with her completely crossed out, almost as if her existence is meaningless, or so is thought. I mean, It's just as Ashley has said before, if you don't think about something for a long period of time, it's like it never happened. She is actively trying to forget these memories, and it's why these characters are blocked out in Ashley's perspective. It isn't just her lack of empathy towards her, but it's also insinuating that Ashley just wants to forget about this whole ordeal, unlike Andrew, as this event has likely been etched into his mind. It's no coincidence that the story ensures that the player is aware that she has no qualms working with demons and doesn't flinch at the sight of them to really show how wretched she is. Her expressions throughout the narrative have always been malicious, evil, and maniacal. However, there is a scene that completely shifts Ashley's image upside down, and it focuses on a crucial factor of her character: remorse. Here, Leyley confesses her crimes to her mother, which is colossal for her character as it adds various new perspectives on her. First, it establishes the fact that Ashley is so desperate for attention from her parents as any child normally would, if they lacked any, to the point where she would confess an act such as this to her mother. Not only that, but it also highlights a key aspect of Leyley as shown in this flashback, which is a realization that she is a demented and unsalvageable individual. But Renee is so isolated from everything that even upon hearing her own daughter admit to murder means nothing to her. It's always only been about herself. Her breakdown may look reminiscent of the one from when Andy refused to lock Nina up, but it is quite different. While both instances were generally her lashing out over rejection, this one is devoid of any manipulative ploy, as is the case when she wanted Andrew to choose her over Nina. Here, it completely twists what I discussed in my video on Ashley. She wasn't always this way. She really acted almost like a normal child. One who was frustrated over her neglectful parents and felt regret over her crimes. Her scenes as a teenager do also support this, given the fact that the main reason for her going on a date is because her friends mocked her for not having kissed a boy yet, and it hurt her personally. Something that the current Ashley was shown to never be concerned with. She was the type of person to not really care about what others think and stay true to herself. Yet, this scene shows otherwise. All that mattered to her is doing whatever it was as long as it was with Andrew. Hell, Ashley is even shown to regret that she tore the drawing of her and Andy, as well as immense frustration over her mother not believing her. I think this scene is significant in multiple factors, and it all has to do with establishing the differences between Andrew and Ashley and everything that has been discussed throughout this video. While Andrew's natural tendencies as a child were fearing his mother due to her forceful and commanding nature, I think I would mark Ashley's tendencies to be simply a child yearning for a closer connection with her parents. She has shown to dislike them, as seen in the flashback in the beginning of chapter 3. But it all stems from Renee's neglectful nature in the first place. Not to mention, it also shows just how little Andrew understands Ashley, as in this scene, he can't even comprehend the reasoning behind Ashley's breakdown and simply assumes that she is afraid of those consequences, when she was actively trying to be punished for her actions in the first place, something Andrew would never dream of doing. The way this scene is arranged, it's almost as though Leyley wanted to confide in Andy and vent her guilt. It wasn't a manipulative tactic as she's been shown to do throughout the story. But it doesn't work. Her feelings just do not reach Andy as he just falls asleep during her breakdown. It is this scene alone that really hammers down the point that these two are in direct opposition in everything they stand for, both in how they are written as well as their character traits. The story makes sure to show that Leyley is aware of her rotten behavior, and it's what torments her here. Now, I don't actually think she really cared for Nina, because that isn't the point. The point is that she realized that she is not normal and there is something horrific about her. She is being honest with herself and accepts that she is a bad person. This is a far cry from the way Andrew acts, as he is one who tends to lie his way through life, and this scene is no exception. While he claims that he is unable to sleep due to the Nina situation, and claims that he is willing to take the burden of the murder for himself to protect Leyley, he doesn't seem to have issues sleeping through her frustrations, and his only topic of interest here are consequences, consequences, and consequences. However, despite this, I do believe that Andrew would actually go through with this and take the blame for Ashley if push comes to shove. He is constantly trying to escape responsibility for his own actions, but he almost immediately owns up to them, no matter there's any risk of Ashley being hurt, or if he hurts Ashley himself, as seen in how he handles the physical abuse he dealt to Ashley in shots and such. This flashback highlights that Ashley has never been this demonic manipulator that Andrew sees her as. It was merely a deception contrived by Andrew to lie to himself and use Ashley as a scapegoat. She is an insecure, fragile, and anxious girl who's addicted to the attention of her brother due to neglect from everybody around her. She's always wanted friends, but she's just closed herself off so much and put on this facade of detachment and sociopathy that she must convince herself that she does not need any because she has Andrew. This can be seen here, where Ashley seems to be quite disappointed over her lack of friends upon witnessing the 3 random girls using a Ouija board. It's interesting because while Andrew is drawn towards Ashley because she is the only person to ever understand him, Ashley clings on to Andrew wholeheartedly despite the fact that he doesn't seem to fathom her fundamentally here, and likely in the present as well. We've seen many instances of Andrew's thoughts in which he writes Ashley off as somebody who only cares about herself and is only out to harm him. Regardless of the way Ashley treats Andrew with how whimsical she is with her actions, she definitely cares for him, and does everything in her power to ensure that both of them are safe in her own reckless ways. She otherwise wouldn't have done everything in her power to try bringing Andrew back after her soul was ripped out of him. She wouldn't have begged Andrew to stay being her friend despite being a bad person, and I think the wording here is somewhat intriguing. as it does further support the idea that Ashley was originally resembling a normal kid. Bad people don't have friends, but she wants Andrew to be beside her regardless because she cares for him so much. The cunning exterior that we were shown of her in prior chapters is unraveled here, as it proves that the blackmail was for nothing with how flimsy Ashley's conscience is. Children absolutely need parental figures to be raised and taught right from wrong from their own experiences in conjunction with the guidance of their parents. Leyley desired that dynamic, but it was futile as Renee isn't interested in raising her children and has left the job to Andy. But how on earth is Andy supposed to know how to act as a parent to Leyley? It is quite a confusing relationship to him given his personality, as he much prefers taking things easy. Hence why he let Leyley do whatever she wanted. It can't be wrong if she's happy, right? But what if making her happy results in the torment of others, as in the case of Nina's death? This is just my interpretation, but I do believe that Andrew has definitely influenced Ashley to become who she is partially. But this isn't to imply that all of Ashley's cruelty simply stems from Andrew, as she was already capable of such acts beforehand. Instead, I think she may be trying to mimic Andrew's detached behavior in how he does not concern himself with anyone, and given the fact that Ashley's loneliness pains her most, it may be a means of replicating that lifestyle to protect herself. It may be why she has this belief that everyone is out to get her, and that she must be strong at every point in her life, as seen in her raising on cannibalism. I mean, Renee has already stated that Ashley looks up to Andrew so much, so it wouldn't be a stretch for this to be the case. When inspecting how Ashley comes off in Andrew's perspective, all her actions really do resemble the exact things Andrew is capable of, with no issues, as seen in how he's calmly able to kill the warden and effectively manipulate Julia, for instance. She is evil in everything she does, as she is calm with demons, an adept manipulator, and has no qualms regarding the crimes she has caused in the story. They're all traits that Andrew is a professional at, but tends to hide unless he is forced into a situation in which he has to bring these traits out. It's what this flashback really wanted to bring a question to, whether or not Andrew is the true cause of Ashley's current state. This scene deconfirms one of my main points in my Ashley video. She wasn't always this way, and she really is a product of circumstances, unlike Andrew. What I find interesting is that the two of them have a grave misconception of one another. While Andrew assumes that Ashley only cares about herself and is only out to be as malicious as she can to Andrew for the sake of it, Ashley assumes that Andrew will act just as superficial with her as he does with everybody else. She assumes that at any instance, he can and will leave her permanently and leave her isolated, as seen in the way she reacts to Andrew's change in burial. But she is unaware of just how infatuated he is about her. She just can't help it. She's always been super anxious about anything regarding Andrew, and needs concrete evidence that he will always be beside her, such as the demand for a kiss in this scene. She must do whatever it takes to make him depend on her, or otherwise, he will just disappear. This chapter's objective is to humanize Ashley and explore a different side to her, essentially peeling off all the masks that she put up throughout the narrative. It's why the story has smaller scenes, such as showcasing that Ashley cares for animals, as she is against killing this cultist roommate so that someone will be around to take care of the guinea pig. It's these characteristics that really do highlight the possibility that Ashley simply is putting up a front of sociopathy to defend herself, which can also be evident here, where Ashley asks Andrew if he feels anything for the lives he's ruined. It establishes that perhaps Ashley still feels an ounce of guilt over everything they've done, but she can't show those emotions and feelings because then she would be weak, and she has to be powerful and in control or else she'll break. It's ironic, as Andrew is the one who is quite vocal about his actions, yet it is Ashley who really seems to be the one who may feel something for the atrocities they've committed, yet bottles everything up to appear strong. It adds layers to Ashley's tendency to push consequences onto Andrew, as it may not simply be for the sake of getting Andrew ensnared by her, it may also be a means to protect herself from all those consequences that has pained her to no end as a child. But unlike Andrew, it wasn't about escaping responsibility, it was the fact that she had committed that act in of itself. She has accepted that she is a horrid individual and is aware of it entirely, and so she will make full use of it by manipulating Andrew and molding him into whatever she wants him to be. However, what separates the two in this regard is that while Andrew is perfectly able to switch between his two personalities, Ashley isn't, and her switch is done quite haphazardly. It usually happens out of frustration and desperation when she doesn't get what she wants. When it comes to the roots that occur if Ashley shoots Andrew in her vision, it offers interesting perspectives on what can easily cause them to regress back into their old selves, which would lead to either a miserable life as seen in Shots and Such, or a double suicide as seen in Splat. It tackles Ashley's character arc on her hesitation to change, and wanting to revert to the good old days versus Andrew's desire to grow and move past his old self. It is a role reversal, as many of the things Andrew was typically seen doing throughout the story is now in the hands of Ashley, as Andrew is now the one who is being unresponsive to Ashley's requests, just as she had been doing to him throughout their lives. It's interesting because while Andrew is adept at deluding himself, Ashley just can't. She tries persuading herself that she doesn't need Andrew, but she just isn't able to. She can't even kill him no matter how hard she tries. In the alternative of this scene, Andrew is fully capable of killing Ashley himself, which I think emphasizes a key factor of the way the siblings feel about each other. The way Andrew's killing of Ashley and then himself plays out really shows how deep his obsession with Ashley goes, as it isn't like typical love. It goes all the way back to his romanticization of dying together, as it would symbolize a poetic ending in which they would truly be inseparable, with their bodies mingled with one another in death. His love is demented, and this really cements the fact that it's Andrew who's incapable of living without Ashley at all. In Ashley's case, her inability to murder Andrew showcases that her feelings are much more grounded, as she simply just wants to be beside Andrew even amidst all their arguments and troubles. She just can't bring herself to kill him because she cares about him so much, and I think that's what the scene was going for. Maybe this is the opportunity for Ashley to be happy once again, as she's been constantly weeping and sobbing as she is powerless to do anything to prevent Andrew's rage. He has tried to kill her, which adds an extra layer to her desperation, as she now has to not only worry about him leaving her, but also the risk of him killing her at any instance, further adding to the anxiety. The switching of roles couldn't be more obvious with the many scenes highlighting this, such as Ashley's regret of her reckless decisions as seen in her labeling shooting Andrew as a massive mistake, while Andrew is the one whose rash decisions are shown in full display, with rage consuming him, which led to almost killing his own sister. He may be quite calculating and methodical, but if angered, he tends to make reckless decisions that can result in irreversible results, as seen in how he feels over the fact that he had tried to kill her. It's why the story keeps insisting to Ashley that she has to leave Andrew, as he is way too dangerous at this point and will likely kill her. But she can't. This is no longer about whether or not Ashley wanting to manipulate Andrew to keep him around. She just simply wants to be next to him, and that's that. Additionally, a crucial detail about Ashley here is that she calls Andrew a good person. This is quite a big deal in comparison to what she attempted after burying Nina, where her means of blackmail were founded on the notion that Andrew has become a bad person, which would result in the two of them being partners in crime, rejected by everyone else. It was supposed to be a way to get Andrew to be completely dependent on her, and I do think that Ashley calling him a good person here really does insinuate that many of her actions throughout the narrative are a defense mechanism, and once she loses that control over the situation, that mask is peeled off, and what we see in this fruit is the true and genuine Ashley. All these scenes culminate into characterizing Ashley as a normal girl under this monstrous mask that has gradually become her own, as opposed to Andrew, who is a monster disguised under this human mask, as seen in how Julie describes him in the letter. Not to mention, this route does also highlight Ashley's flaws when it comes to mimicking Andrew's traits. For example, the threats she sends towards Andrew are empty in comparison to what he threw at her in the past, and it doesn't scare him at all, as he just couldn't care less about her demands in this route. He has already chosen to be Andrew and ditch Andy. It's ironic, as the way the events play out in this route are akin to the route in which Andrew decides to embrace Andy, which eventually leads to a dead end. But what creates these differences is that he does not want to be a spineless individual with no agency, but it is so much in the opposite direction that it leads to the shell of who he once was, as simply just ditching Andy isn't enough to a path of happiness for the two of them. Technically, she would be safe and happy in the demon realm, as they would no longer have to worry about the outside world, but it is all at the cost of his own identity, and he loathes it to no end. He just cannot help reverting to Andy when things are too tough, and it is such a depressing conclusion for him, as he is forever stuck in the demon realm, unable to do anything, and is simply taken into and out of the box whenever Ashley pleases. In the case of shots and such, things gradually just become worse and worse, as Andrew eventually becomes more like Ashley was throughout the story up until now, rash, rebellious, and stubborn. He's constantly getting himself drunk and is overall way too hostile. He is such a broken mess that you might as well make the case that despite rejecting Andy, he may as well not have any sort of angels into his life, as he's just chained in his apartment, unable to do anything, and is at the whim of whatever Ashley has in store for him. I think it's likely what causes the physical attacks, as this is going on the opposite end of the spectrum. It's no coincidence that he ends up taking the identity of the cultist in the first place. Decay utilizes this route as a means to highlight that the answer lies elsewhere, as clearly just embracing his nature as Andrew is not enough. And this leads to what is known as shots and such and splat, and neither option is the answer. While Andrew's hostility increases with each passing second, Ashley's decreases as seen in how she is drawn in many of the CGs as well as the way she operates in this chapter. Compare this scene to the moment in the first chapter. The threats are similar, but the circumstances are different, which leads to a physical attack launched at Ashley due to Andrew being done with everything at this point, and it destroys her. All these scenes of Andrew's rampage on Ashley are a reminder that what is done, and things just can't go back to what they once were, and her dialogue changes drastically. Her claims to change aren't simply a means of manipulation, as her walls have all been shattered and she really is trying to make things work this time. Otherwise, she would have lashed out at him for rejecting her claim to change for the millionth time. It's why she dislikes Andrew as shown here, as he is the one she cannot control as opposed to Andy. It is so unbearable that she just has no idea how to go about handling the risk of death from the very same person she's been trying so hard to keep close to her. She cherishes those good old days of their goofy adventures together as it was the time of her life. Things were much simpler. She can't accept change because she doesn't want it in the first place. Why change something that was so enthralling? However, Andrew was never happy back then, and she's aware of the fact. She is simply trying to run away from the reality that things can never go back that way. But does it really have to? What I find compelling about this scene is that it creates a similarity between Decay and Burial, as in both instances, they are interacting in good fun and bantering with one another, something that was completely absent in Decay due to the circumstances at hand. This route is full of misery and abuse, but this scene shows that even in this route, maybe there is a way to fix things. This just isn't one of them. It is crucial to have moments like this in a route full of negativity and dark topics, as too much of it can come off as unbearable, which can result in it not being taken as seriously. Andrew just wants Ashley to be an upstanding citizen like he wants to be, and move on from their past, further contrasting Ashley's previous goal of trying to do the complete opposite in making the two of them be bad people so they only have each other. On top of that, this road increasingly becomes more ominous and depressing, both in tone and music. What were once soundtracks used for emotional moments between the two of them, such as old fairy tales, are used in uncomforting scenes instead. They are gradually regressing to their old selves, undoing all the growth they had undergone up to this point. There are two defining scenes of this route: the drunken Andrew and the Ashley beatdown. Here, his drunken state caused him to reveal everything about his feelings, the ones he's bottled up his entire life. Doing anything sexual with Ashley was his red line he vowed to never cross, because it would destroy all chances of him ever being able to call himself normal. Yes, he's murdered countless amounts of people, including his parents, but he can say that he's never laid hands on Ashley, so he is still normal. He is a master of excuses, as he has one prepared for every single one of those murders, except for his parents, thus preventing him from ever even calling himself normal in the first place, creating a contradiction within him on inhibiting his feelings for Ashley. But I do get the impression that part of his reason to hinder his desire for Ashley stems from him genuinely not wanting to hurt her. As a key aspect of Andrew's character is that he wants to do everything in his power to protect Ashley and keep her safe. This is evident here, as he claims that despite committing many irredeemable acts, at least he didn't prey on his sister, so he must repress those feelings. In addition, in Ashley's point of view, it is the only thing that she can really offer him. Throughout the story, it has been clear that Ashley assumes that everyone does something out of ulterior motives. For example, she calls her parents whores simply because they were acquainted with the neighborhood rather than only focusing on each other, which also fuels her belief on having Andrew ditch everyone around him and only focus on her. She's also immediately assumed that he slept with Julia despite only meeting her in shots and such. It must be the motive for everyone. It's what makes her so confused at Burial Andrew, as it doesn't register within her to be loved without any ulterior motives in mind. It's also what caused her to persuade Andrew into sleeping with her after what occurs in the beatdown, which is repulsive, ugly, crude, and horrifying. The way it is presented perfectly depicts how Andrew has been throughout this part of the story. Slowly and slowly, things spiral and the tone becomes darker and darker. No matter how hard he tries, it will never be enough, and she will always be dissatisfied due to her anxieties towards him. He is the root of everything, and it isn't Ashley. He hit her out of self-defense due to having a knife pointed at him. Well, it's his fault for not knowing it was a bluff. She isn't at fault for treating him terribly because he has upper body strength. The problem is always Andrew, never Ashley. This right here is exactly what he hates the most, to be held accountable for anything, even if it is truly something he should be responsible for. It's what made him be on the edge in the flashback at the start of chapter 3, as he was being punished for things Ashley was at fault for. Hell, this scene further supports that Ashley has always known Andrew for who he is, as she is aware of how horrible he can be, which is in contrast to Andrew's failure in comprehending Ashley fundamentally, as seen how he writes her off as somebody who doesn't care about him, and is concerned for consequences as much as he is. The beatdown is the most gut-wrenching thing in the story, as it's almost like it parallels the argument in Room 302, with the distinction of Andrew's further descent into toxicity and becoming more abusive. It's Andrew trying everything in his power to go against the inevitability that he is forever glued to Ashley. It is a culmination of everything built up since the start of this route, and a harsh reminder that Andrew will never be able to grow out of this nature of his and only has Ashley to understand him intrinsically. Despite the similarities explained between Burial and Decay Andrew, shots and such, Andrew could never reconcile and accept Ashley for who she is, and it's what leads to his sorry state. Although in an ironic and distorted chain of events, this scene also does highlight the depth of Ashley's feelings in contrast to Julia's, whose feelings serve to further emphasize Ashley's. While Julia felt uneasy around Andrew's superficial and sociopathic nature, and eventually cut ties with him, Ashley still decides to stick beside Andrew despite all the horrific abuse he's thrown at her in this route, all the while being fully aware of just what he's capable of. It is quite an abusive and unhealthy dynamic, as both characters need each other to function, and it's why this route is a dead end after all. It further enhances Burial's themes, which would likely be exploring what could lead them to trusting each other and accepting one another for who they are. This mini-puzzle really hammers down the state of the relationship throughout Decay. It shows a confident Ashley engulfing the room to insinuate her control, further supported with the pink flowers as the color is usually tied to her character. Once those flowers are removed by Andrew, which shows that Andrew is overriding her dominance in the relationship, she becomes frustrated as shown in chapter 1. Finally, once the flowers are replaced with the yellow ones, she is seen crying tears of blood, which represents the point at which Ashley is powerless to stop him and frequently weeps over the irreversible change in the dynamic. how can he ever claim to love Ashley when he treats her this way? He talks so much about how she doesn't care about him and walks all over him due to not complying with his requests. Yet he does so much worse in this physical abuse, as well as the way he treats her in this route, thanks to how much he deludes himself into thinking he is always either in the right or a victim of her whims. He likes to make the claim that Ashley isn't in love with him with the way she acts, yet he does whatever he wants with her as shown here, then claims he loves her. However, things are different here because he realizes what he's done is horrible, and this is one of the rare instances of Andrew taking responsibility for his actions because Ashley is hurt. It is unacceptable to him. He's always shown concern for Ashley's well-being above all else, as he was willing to risk everything just to take her to a hospital when he assumed she was in a coma back in chapter 2. Not to mention, he usually ends up feeling regretful over making her upset, even if he himself is livid at her actions as seen here. Not only is this scene so dreadful, but it is quite tragic as Ashley's means of persuasion are simply just because this is the only way she can think of keeping him around. She says so at the end of Burial upon witnessing the vision in the insane door. Andrew clearly wants to, but not in this fashion. He cares for Ashley so much and wants it to be special and doesn't want it to be so half-assed. But it doesn't really matter to Ashley because it is simply a means to an end. This can be seen before they leave the apartment. Andrew requests to sleep with Ashley properly since the previous night was done terribly since he was drunk, and her face says it all. Despite her love for Andrew, she isn't excited, and instead looks saddened, almost as if she doesn't want to do this, because it is simply a way to keep him around, and not a representation of her affection for him. It can also be viewed as her realizing that this is what she has to put up with for the rest of her life in this route, because it proved that this really was her only value to Andrew and nothing else. Ashley wants to be independent and powerful, but this act in of itself goes against that completely, so it may be related to that. This is also clear in the ending and shots and such, where it reveals that Ashley is merely pretending to enjoy it. It's quite pathetic, as the two of them have truly regressed back into Andy and Leyley, further apparent in this exchange that is word for word exactly what is said at the very start of the game. It's an extension of Decay's prominent theme of acquiring what you think you want until you get it, because at the very end of it all, nothing has changed. The arguments didn't stop, Andrew's bursts of anger haven't either, and he still despises himself for everything that had occurred. For Ashley's lack of care for his desired, the half-assed night he had experienced, and the lack of speciality it had overall. Shots and such takes the twist of what was shown in Burial's ending, as rather than accept and embrace the changes in Andrew and the feelings he has for Ashley, it embraces the toxicity and the unhealthy nature of their current dynamic instead of trying to fix it. Just become the deplorable duo and live your life that way for what it's worth. It isn't the answer, but does it really matter? They are together and that's most important. But Andrew's forever stuck living this terrible life, working a job he hates, and marrying Ashley all the while embracing everything he detests about himself. Nothing is resolved and nothing is fulfilling. It is simply an endless amount of abuse and toxicity, as even Ashley alluded to the fact that Andrew is a wife beater in this route. Once again, this is an ending caused by Andy's existence. He chose to be Andrew, but he lost his identity in the process just as much as he would being Andy, and eventually reverted to being Andy anyways. Splat is ironically a more upbeat and bittersweet conclusion for the siblings despite the fact that it results in death, as instead of embracing the toxicity of their relationship, they just accept that things may be far from salvation, and it's likely why Ashley suggested double suicide in the first place. In this manner, they will always be together in ways Andrew romanticized. Their bodies will be intertwined with none of their arguments and abuse coming into action anymore, and they will be inseparable. Just like the intertwined nature of Shots and such and Splat, as they are two sides of the same coin. Either they live together miserably or die together happily. Splat is actually much closer to Burial's conclusion in contrast to Shots and such, since in this case, they are actually in much better terms as opposed to Shots and such, as they put aside their differences while plunging into their demise. Of all the dead endings in this chapter, it is the only one that doesn't come into fruition due to Andy's existence. He embraces Ashley in this route, but he doesn't end up accepting her for who she is as shown in Burial. There's just something uncomfortably conclusive about this ending for the two of them, as it really does convey the entangled nature of both Andrew and Ashley because of how symbolic it is that they will always be together in one way or another, and it is a callback to Andrew's suggestion all the way back when they were quarantined. While Shots and such essentially goes further into peeling Ashley's facades off, Cliffhanger is the same case but for Andrew. It presents the truth, the things that Andrew has purposely avoided and tricked himself into believing via the past that Lord Unknown has Andrew relive. In particular, it is revealed that he was willing to turn himself in if it meant Nina could come back to life, but not out of any sort of regret or a desire for retribution. It alludes to a point I've made throughout this video. Andrew deceives himself into trying to be a good person that is devoid of consequences while not realizing that he is detached from things completely. The act of turning himself in is simply a means to look normal, otherwise he wouldn't have made the comment of Justice not being able to look after Ashley if he's in jail. Perhaps it is also a means of easing that fear of being caught if she came back to life, since it would no longer cloud his mind. He doesn't care about morality, it's always been about his own comfort. There's just something so fascinating about how Ashley is the one to present a philosophical viewpoint as opposed to Andrew, the literary major. It is as metaphoric as one can get when stressing on Andrew's superficial nature, as he's never shown any sort of weightful discussion, whereas Ashley talks about her nihilistic viewpoint. Whenever her exterior is peeled off, she usually acts much closer to a normal teenager than ever. She only puts up a front of detachment and villainy because she has to be strong. Again, it's what the scene explaining her cannibalism is there in the first place, to enforce Ashley's desire to be the strongest in any situation she's put in. The two of them don't matter in the grand scheme of things, but who cares? They have each other, and that's the most important to her. This road also tackles Andrew's feelings towards Ashley in another lens, and it is the morality behind those feelings. He's aware that it isn't normal and has done everything in his power to run away from it, as explained in this video. It's why he dates Julia after all. The dream sequence really stresses on this trait, as it has him kissing who he had hoped to be Julia, as he wants to desperately fall in love with her to avoid those abnormal feelings. But it ends up being Ashley because it always will be. There is a possibility that Decay's 4th chapter will likely focus on this section of Andrew, as it is an important factor to Ashley's insecurities since she was rejected by Andrew in this scene, which eventually led to her ignoring him for over a year. It should be ideal, as she is no longer bothering about Julia anymore, and he is getting closer and closer to Julia and can attain his utopia of normalcy. But something feels off to him. He is fated to always be with Ashley, and he is aware of the fact. As shown in his monologue in the Ashley beatdown, even when he's with Julia, he just can't stop thinking about Ashley, as seen how frequently he thinks about how she's been avoiding him for over a year. Even these puzzles reveal that he peeps on her showering or changing. It contextualizes Andrew's perspective from the beginning of the story, as he had been trying to avoid being alone with Ashley to bottle these feelings up and pursue Julia, but then the quarantine occurred and he was forced to stay with Ashley. He must face those feelings, just as he must face Andy if he wants to grow and have a healthy relationship with Ashley. The final scene of this chapter really cements this, as it puts his feelings in the forefront and his sexual thoughts are emerging as he speaks to Lord Unknown. He just loves her way too much, and he feels guilty over these feelings as they exist due to their parents. But is that really the case? Ultimately, Ashley is the only person who is capable of seeing Andrew through his superficial personas and was able to connect with him on a deeper level throughout their entire life. Countless scenes in the story show this, which would support the idea that even with all these factors excluded, he still would have felt a similar way. Perhaps, Lord Unknown might be the answer he's been seeking throughout the story and become his salvation from all his pain and misery. It might have to do with Andrew's current status as a grime soul that is supposedly on its way to becoming a tar soul, with the way of transforming potentially being to tear away all those desires for normalcy and his feelings for Ashley. But only time will tell as the story progresses. However, these two are inseparable, and no demonic entity can ever get between them. They will either live together or die with one another.